Hello, I'm Nicola Clay, Head of New Ventures at the Crown Estate. I look after nascent technologies, including carbon capture and storage, floating offshore wind, hydrogen, wave and tidal, floating solar, and other new and exciting uses of the seabed. I'm delighted to be joining you at the Carbon Storage Dialogues through this video, and I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. So before we move to carbon capture and storage and our role there, I'd like to set the context of the challenges we are facing in managing the marine environment. In the UK, the seabed is facing more demands on it than ever before, whether that's supporting natural habitats, enabling vital industries as part of sustainable development, and playing a crucial role in energy security. And perhaps you're facing similar pressures in the Netherlands. So as I talk about what we're doing to enable carbon capture and storage, I encourage you to think about that in the context of managing a very busy seabed. So broadly, our objectives are to enable sufficient carbon storage to reach the UK government's net zero targets, which are set out in the UK's sixth carbon budget, and that's known as CB6. So its targets are 20 to 30 million tonnes per annum of CO2 by 2030, 50 million tonnes per annum by 2035, and 100 million tonnes per annum by 2050. So if we look at our role in carbon capture and storage, we at the Crown Estate, we're the owner of the seabed and the holder of the rights for CO2 storage. So this means that we, as the Crown Estate, were responsible for granting leases for offshore pipeline transportation and issuing subsurface and seabed rights to developers for CO2 storage. And in the UK, we also have a dedicated regulator for CO2 transport and storage, known as the North Sea Transition Authority, NSTA, and central government has a role in the environmental review of projects, as well as providing economic support. So that may feel quite complicated, number of different bodies involved, but we're all working together towards the same aim of developing the CCS sector. To give you a little more detail, developers are required to apply for a carbon storage licence granted by the NSTA and a storage agreement for lease granted by the Crown Estate. And that will enable them to do the exploration stage of looking at their transport and storage opportunities under the seabed. And then after that successful exploration stage, developers would proceed with a permit application and a lease, which allows the project to develop to injection. So that's the context. So if we look now at the projects that we have developing in the UK government's Department for Energy Security and Net Zero has a cluster sequencing programme to enable 4 industrial clusters to deliver our CB6 targets. And the first 2 storage projects to be awarded Track 1 status in 2022 were the Northern Endurance Partnership's Endurance Saline Aquifer Store on the east coast of the UK in the southern North Sea, and HyNet's Hamilton Bay Depleted Gas Field Store on the west coast of the UK in the Irish Sea. And then we have 2 Track 2 clusters, which were announced this year, Viking Carbon Capture Store in the southern North Sea, and Acorn off the coast of Scotland. And our current expectation is that the Northern Endurance Partnership and HyNet, the 2 Track 1 projects, aim to be injecting in the second half of this decade and reaching that 20 to 30 million tonnes per annum by 2030. So what's going to go into those stores? So we have 8 carbon capture projects that are currently negotiating with the UK government to use the transport and storage projects. So that's what we're working on now. But we're also thinking really hard about the future, and we're engaging with industry to understand their aspirations. So for example, in March this year, we at Crown Estate launched our first developer engagement for CCS in collaboration with Crown Estate Scotland. And we conducted a survey to establish market requirements for seabed and subsurface carbon store development. And we looked at 2 topics. Firstly, what are the number of stores, the volumes, the rates that developers hoped to achieve by 2035 and 2050? And then secondly, what are the opportunities and challenges that the developers were seeing around meeting those targets? So there's sort of the sector-wide challenges. And what we saw from the responses was a really strong developer appetite to support the progress towards the CB6 targets, and a number of challenges which as a country we're working through. And that strong interest from the developers was reinforced through 21 additional carbon storage appraisal licenses that have recently been awarded by the NSTA for the North Sea and the Irish Sea. And those 21 licenses are shared across 14 operators, and they include additional sites for the operators of the Track 1 and Track 2 projects that I mentioned earlier, plus Neptune, Carbon Catalyst, Perenco, ExxonMobil, Spirit, EnQuest, Chrysaor. And so what my team is doing at the moment is looking at what types of leasing products we could design for these future potential projects. So as we learn more about what the developers need and what we need, and working together with the NSTA and central government, how do we make sure we have a really streamlined process for enabling the development of this sector? And scaling up is a balance. So we need to appraise more stores so we have a better understanding of the storage opportunity, and we need more emitters to be ready to use these stores. And we also need a stronger view of how the economic future of CCS could develop, and including the potential for cross-border storage. I think I've come to the end of my time, so I hope this gives you an overview of where CCS is in the UK. There's so much more to say that I don't have time to cover today. For example, I haven't touched on the economic model, but let's hold that for another time. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy your event. Thanks.